Live NFL trivia every Wednesday night on Twitch at 9 p.m. Eastern. Come show off your football knowledge for a chance to win cash prizes. Check the link in the description to find out more. And now, on with our feature presentation. Okay, be honest, people. Did anyone see that coming on Saturday night at all? Did anyone in their right mind see Vanderbilt, the freaking Vanderbilt Commodores, doing what they did to Hawaii? I'm sure a lot of people thought they would win that game. Heck, maybe some people thought they would win it by a lot. But no one, and I mean no one, had them dropping 63 points, with a 35-point outpouring in the third quarter. The game was a complete bloodbath in every sense of the word. Vanderbilt had over 600 yards of total offense, including over 400 yards rushing on 9.2 yards per carry. And in the third quarter, on 4 offensive drives, the Commodores went 4 for 4 on scoring touchdowns. We haven't seen an offensive outpouring like that from Vanderbilt in years. Maybe it was the old logo holding them back, because this was the first time since November 22nd, 1969, when they beat Davidson 63-8, that they scored 60 points in a game. Heck, this was just the second time since World War II that this happened. But this win by the Commodores got me to thinking. We've seen teams score 60 points in a game many times before, even if this is something that Vanderbilt is not used to in the slightest bit. And we've seen teams go on the road to score 60 points. That usually happens a few times a season, especially if you get an extreme mismatch in conference play. And we've seen teams score 60 points in the opening game of the season. Even though there's often a lot of rust to shake off, seeing as this is their first competitive game of the season, there are teams that do that and just start the season off with their foot on the gas pedal. But to see a team score 60 points on the road in their first game of the season, that is surprisingly rare. But that's exactly what Vanderbilt did last Saturday. And that raises the question, does that mean anything whatsoever? Can we tell anything and predict how Vanderbilt is going to do based on one game against Hawaii, a team that is in shambles and is projected to be near the bottom of the Mountain West? And that's when I had to do some digging. I looked at every team to fit that criteria. Score at least 60 points in the opening game of the season, with that game being on the road. I restricted it to everything from World War II on, just because records prior to that are kinda spotty. And prior to what Vanderbilt did against Hawaii, in total, there were 9 teams to score 60 or more points in their first game of the season, with that game being on the road. Keep in mind that a lot of good teams will either play neutral site games or home games as their first game, so it's not like there's an opportunity for this to happen all that often. Some of these teams beat up on way better opponents than others, and the circumstances with all 9 of these games are different. But the bottom line is this: if history is anything to go off of, and trust me, Vanderbilt's win was absolutely historic in that context, Vanderbilt will be in for a really, really good season this year. Or at least better than what a lot of people think. Let's break down all 9 of these games. And I should note that footage does not exist for every single one of these games, but I will point that out when it becomes a problem. Enjoy this one if you're a Vanderbilt fan, however, because you are in some pretty good company. The last time a team scored 60 points in the opening game of the season, and did so on the road, was in 2005, coincidentally, against Hawaii. That team was the USC Trojans, as in the reigning national champions. Just a tiny bit different from Vanderbilt, a team that's gone 2-19 over the last 2 seasons, but Vanderbilt is actually in the same group with 2005 USC, which is somewhat nuts to think about. In that game, the Trojans won 63-17, so they scored the exact same number of points that the Commodores did. And the end result for them that season? An appearance in the Rose Bowl playing for the national title against Texas. We all know how that game ended. And an undefeated regular season before all of their wins got vacated. Prior to that, USC did the same exact thing in 1999, also against Hawaii, defeating them 62-7 in the opening week of the season down at Aloha Stadium. While USC didn't fare quite as well that year, going 6-6, that still made them bowl eligible, which is one of the main things we're looking at here in evaluating the success of someone's season. This has only happened 10 times before since World War II, including what Vanderbilt did on Saturday. Which is what makes it weird that 2 of those times, it happened in the same exact year. In 1998, you had Kentucky play their in-state rival Louisville on the road in the opening game of the season. And led by Tim Couch, the eventual #1 overall draft pick, the Wildcats destroyed the Cardinals, winning it 68-34 through Mike Leach's air raid offense. It was one of the most stunning results in the history of the Governor's Cup, just by the sheer nature of the victory. And this might be more comparable to the situation that Vanderbilt is in versus the other two times with USC, where the Trojans entered the game nationally ranked and had high expectations. Kentucky was unranked, and was coming off of a season with a losing record. However, this win set the tone for the rest of the season, as they went 7-5 and made it to the Outback Bowl. So we're 3 for 3 in terms of teams being bowl eligible after pulling this off. And that same season, you had UCF, coming off of a season with a losing record in 1997, just like Kentucky, going on the road to Louisiana Tech and winning it 64-30. The end result for the Knights was one of the greatest and most iconic seasons in program history, thanks in part to the play of quarterback Dante Culpepper. Even though the Knights did not make a bowl game due to some controversial behind-the-scenes things, the Knights went 9-2, finishing with the best record amongst all independents in college football. That makes us 4 for 4 with bowl eligibility after putting up 60 or more points on the road in their first game of the season. But we're not done yet. Far from it, in fact. Prior to that, the last time it happened was in 1995, when the Nebraska Cornhuskers played a conference game in the Big 8 on the road against Oklahoma State to open up the season. Now, Nebraska was coming off of an undefeated national championship season, so a bit different than what Vanderbilt was going through this season. But Nebraska ended up going into Stillwater and winning this game by a final score of 64-21. And Nebraska finished the season by going undefeated, playing in the Fiesta Bowl and winning the national championship for the second straight season, going 12-0. That makes us 5 for 5 in the bowl eligibility column. And the hits just keep on coming, when during their opening game of the 1989 season, Houston went on the road to Las Vegas to take on UNLV, and won by a very nice score of 69-0. Unfortunately, there is no footage available of this game, so this is just some more footage of Vanderbilt running train on Hawaii. However, this wouldn't be the last time that Houston put on a show offensively, as evidenced by their win later in the season against SMU, when they scored 95 points. Houston was a great team that season in the Southwest Conference, and even though they did not make a bowl game due to being on probation, they went 9-2, so we're 6 for 6. This happened 2 times during the 1988 season as well, when Fresno State went on the road to defeat New Mexico by a final score of 68-10, and when Houston, once again, opened up the season on the road, when they played Louisiana Tech and won in a shutout 60-0 victory down in Shreveport. Once again, there's no footage from either of these 2 games, so we're just sticking with the Vanderbilt-Hawaii game. However, both of these teams also went on to have incredibly successful seasons. With Houston, they went 9-3 and made it to the Aloha Bowl. With Fresno State, they went 10-2, won the Big West, and made it to the California Bowl. 2 teams in 1988 scoring 60 or more points on the road in their opening game of the season, and 2 teams not just being bowl eligible, but making it to a bowl game as well. And this only happened one other time in the history of college football since World War II, with this coming in 1954, with the Pioneers going on the road to play Colorado College, even though the game was still held in Denver. Amazingly enough, and this makes no sense to me whatsoever, there is actually footage of this game. How there's more footage available from this 1954 non-conference game between Denver and Colorado College than there is from any of the 1980s games I mentioned, and the 1999 game between USC and Hawaii, especially since Denver discontinued their football program after 1960, I truly have no idea. However, what we do know is that Denver demolished Colorado College, winning that game by a final score of 72-0. Denver had an unbelievable season after that, going 9-1 and winning the Skyline Conference. The Pioneers didn't make a bowl game because the Skyline Conference didn't get an automatic bid, and at-larges weren't really a thing when you only had 7 bowl games, especially in the Skyline Conference, which wasn't exactly the best of conferences. But a 9-1 record to win the conference and post the greatest season in program history is a massive success. So that's the data set. All 9 teams prior to Vanderbilt to score 60 or more points in the opening week of the season and go on the road to do it. All 9 of these teams finished the season bowl eligible, and their combined record was 83-22, winning a whopping 79% of their games. Literally not a single team to score 60 or more points on the road in the opening week of the season finished the season with a record below 500. And in today's day and age, where there are 10,000 different bowl games, and where you sometimes see teams below 500 playing in a bowl game, all 9 of them, assuming there was no situation like Houston in 1989 when they were on probation, would have played in a bowl game if they wanted to. In other words, Vanderbilt is an extremely, and I mean extremely good company here. Now, am I saying that Vanderbilt is going to finish the season as a bowl-eligible team, especially since they're going into the season as the team projected to be the worst in the SEC, and especially since even though this win against Hawaii was extremely impressive and no one's taking that away from them, this was a game that they were expected to win, and this didn't impact their over-under in the slightest bit. I'm not saying that at all. Their schedule in the SEC, like just about every SEC schedule, is particularly brutal, and even if we give them a win against FCS school Elon at home, it will be tough for them on paper to win 4 games in their remaining 10. However, what I am saying is this: history is on their side in more ways than one. If they don't finish 500 or better, they will become literally the first team in the history of college football in the post-World War II era of reliable records to fail to do this after such a dominant performance on the road on opening day. Because Vanderbilt didn't just beat Hawaii last Saturday. They beat them in absolutely historic fashion, to the point where Vanderbilt fans have way more hope, and understandably so, after that game than they did before. It has been an extremely rough time period for Vanderbilt. They haven't made a bowl game since 2018. They've won 1 game in SEC play in the last 3 years. They're widely regarded as the laughingstock of the conference, and they haven't finished a season with a winning record since James Franklin did this back in 2013, close to a decade ago. But their odds of doing it this year just went up tremendously, because the history of college football is on their side. Get your official Jaguar Gator 9 merchandise by going to jg9shop.com, and be sure to like this video, ring the notification bell, and subscribe down below if you haven't already, as it helps the channel out a lot. And be sure to check out Twitch every Wednesday night at 9 p.m. Eastern for your chance to play NFL Trivia and win cash prizes. Link in the description below. Also, special thanks to all of our Patreon supporters for helping out the channel. Your support is greatly appreciated. So you can become a patron and request future video topics in the description below.